What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
Stan and Ollie, Laurel and Hardy, an old school duo from the time, early Hollywood slapstick comedy. I was never into the Three Stooges. I was introduced to Laurel and Hardy from like my step grandpa. Around my teenage years, I may have been like early high school, late middle school. I can't remember exactly the time frame. But I was staying with them for some reason, and he had Laurel and Hardy tapes, and I remember watching a lot of them. Later, I bought a bunch on DVD. But during the VHS years, there was VHS copy protection technology. I don't know if anybody knew this. Where if you're trying to dub VHS from one to the other, it would like go really dark and then really light. So you had to have like this special device, which the high school I went to, I was part of a video production class that we edited videos and all kinds of shit. So we had one of those devices, and let's just say I got a hold of one of those devices and basically would rip all kinds of VHS movies from that point forward. And then later DVDs came out and then ripped those. And then later, UFCs came out and I would, have a collection. I would always collect really outdated, something that was gonna be obsolete, whether it's CDs or DVDs or VHS. I was just ahead of the curve whenever it came to getting archiving content. So I'm a huge fan of Laurel and Hardy. There was a movie that came out in like the 90s that I never saw, but I don't think it was rated very well either. This one, starring John C. Reilly and Steve Coogan, amazing casting. The fat suit that John C. Reilly, I don't think he gained the weight, but the fat suit's amazing as far as like being a convincing fat guy. I mean, there's even like scenes where they're still working for Hal Roach, which was the producer that like owned them. Like basically Hollywood was set up in a completely different way. So you always saw like the same actors working with the same producers always, because they were under contract and they couldn't, they weren't allowed to, work anywhere else. Kind of like the UFC in a way. But yeah, the fat suit was amazing. Great casting, great acting in this. But this one takes place towards the end of their career when they're trying to kind of get a resurgence to start doing movies again. And they're doing stage shows out in Europe in the 1930s, just after the war. It's basically taking it from a time in their life, which I wasn't aware of. I think I've seen documentaries and, I've kind of done some research on them way back in the day, like early internet days. But it's kind of like their comeback story. In a way, it was their attempt at coming back, where they're basically doing the same kind of skits that they would have in the movie on a stage in front of like, nobody. And then it's kind of their building up of a following again to try and do this Robin Hood movie that never came out. But Laurel was the mastermind behind the whole thing. The movie's very much like the relationship you would have with a band or even podcasts, for instance, where you have these two people that were just put together. Laurel had other partners in the past, but for whatever reason, when he teamed up with Oliver Hardy, things took off, and that was the duo that they had the big meteoric rise with. And then, towards the end of the career, when things aren't going so good, then you realize that it's like the relationship was kind of based on nothing, but then still grew into something because they did have this history together. And Laurel was the writer of everything. And this movie shows how dedicated he was and how much he cared about the work that he did and how much he did care about his partner. But just I love that this movie is rated well. It's an amazing movie. So it's worth the high ratings it's getting on Rotten Tomatoes, but for me, because I had the connection to Laurel and Hardy for so much of my life. Like there were even times when I was working and I would have to get up at like 4 a.m., which didn't last for very long, get, because I could never. I'm way more of a night person. But I would literally wake up watching Laurel and Hardy while I would make my breakfast and my coffee, trying to wake up to go work at a place that was just soul disintegrating. Um, but yeah, like now I haven't as much the classic tune of their theme song. It's just I remember having that as like I would hack my mom's Macintosh to like change the default sounds for everything. So I'd like have the theme song for Laurel and Hardy as one thing. I would have like "Somebody Stop Me" from The Mask. I would have like I would just put a microphone up to a TV and record them onto my mom's Mac. This is like middle school days, early high school. It's like all around that kind of same time. And yeah, just a huge fan. And it's just, it warms my heart to see a movie done, handled in this way. Like compared especially to the Queen movie that came out last year, Bohemian Rhapsody. Like this is so much more of an honest portrayal of not only just of artists, but like performers, and just like how being creative is not easy, and just like everything is effortless, and just the Queen documentary is the high point of disappointment when it comes to like representing what it is, the struggle it is to be an artist of any kind, versus this movie takes the realistic approach in a lot of ways, but in that you get all of the heart and soul that was missing from Bohemian Rhapsody. The music was the best part of Bohemian Rhapsody. This movie, from top to bottom, had references from, all of their classics. And it's just a heartwarming story. It's just a heartwarming story. Even if you're not a fan of Laurel and Hardy, I would highly recommend checking it out. I don't know the history of, Buster Keaton or the Marx Brothers or all these other kind of comedics, slapstick kind of groups that were around that time. But Laurel and Hardy were my favorite by far. Just even in their original stuff, it wasn't, I don't know, I don't know, it had a heart to it in general. But I always hated, the one thing I hated growing up, I was a fat kid. I'm still, there's only been a small part of my life where you could consider me thin. And I love Stan. I loved Stan Laurel was my favorite. He's like one of my heroes, let's just say. As now that I see he was like the mastermind, the writer, he's my hero on that. Like I'm uncovering a lot of heroes doing the show. And I always wanted to be Stan Laurel for Halloween, but I always fit with the Oliver Hardy. I don't know if I ever dressed as them because I probably just couldn't bring myself to being Oliver. Maybe I did. I want to say maybe I did. One year with my friend Matt, and he was Laurel and I was Hardy. But yeah, that was one of the most disappointing parts about being fat growing up. Aside from all the bullying and wanting to kill myself and like just being a disappointment to parents that were like, athletes and cheerleaders and shit, not being able to be Stan Laurel for Halloween was probably at the top of the list as far as disappointments, maybe like top 3, top 5 disappointing parts about being fat growing up. But yeah, go out and watch Stan and Ollie. I believe it's technically came out last year. If it did, it would have been super high on my list as far as my top movies. It's just top to bottom, an amazing film and a great telling of their story through the end of their career. Yeah, go watch it. New episodes of my show come out every day. Subscribe everywhere podcasts are found. Binge the full week in audio and video versions over at patreon.com/Inspired Disorder. InspiredDisorder.com for all of my artwork and podcasts. Go over there and buy some artwork, please. Please, please. I need to buy a new iPhone. At Ray Taylor for me on all social media. Have a great day, everybody. Peace out.